I want you to picture someone in your life right now. You probably already know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah, we definitely all have that one person.
Right. That one person who just like constantly drains your energy, the one who always seems to create problems or, just makes your life relentlessly difficult.
You see their name pop up on your phone and you just let out that heavy sigh.
Exactly. You know the one. And usually we just think of interacting with them as annoying. It's like, social frustration we have to go vent to a friend about later.
Yeah, you complain and try to move on.
But what if hanging out with that person isn't just an annoyance? Like, what if it is literally making your cells age faster?
I mean, the biology is finally catching up to the psychology on this. And the findings are showing that chronic social friction leaves a very real physical footprint.
And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are digging into a fascinating 2026 study from PNAS. That's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
It's a huge, really rigorous study.
It really is. They investigated the hidden biological costs of what they term negative social ties. So we're going to uncover what these relationships are actually doing to your body at a cellular level.
Right, and who is the most vulnerable to getting stuck with them?
Yes, and why the specific type of relationship you have with this person changes the biological impact entirely. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really understand the health impacts, we first need to define the terminology the researchers are using. Because they aren't just talking about, a passing disagreement.
Right.
They use a very specific term for these individuals. They call them a hassler.
A hassler. I mean, it sounds almost mild, but the definition in the study is actually pretty rigorous, isn't it?
Very rigorous. A hassler is defined as someone in your close social network who often causes problems or makes your life difficult.
Often being the key word there.
Exactly. This isn't someone who occasionally gets on your nerves. It is a consistent, reliable source of friction. And looking at the data, it's a surprisingly common phenomenon.
How common are we talking?
Nearly 30% of the people surveyed reported having at least one hassler in their network.
Wow, so almost 1 in 3 people are dealing with a constant source of friction in their inner circle. That is a massive portion of the population.
It really is. And when the researchers broke down the average person's close social network, which typically consists of about 5 core people, they found that roughly 8.1% of those network members fall into this hassler category.
So they are deeply embedded in our daily routines.
Very deeply. Now, to measure what these embedded hasslers are actually doing to us, the scientists didn't look at gray hair or wrinkles.
Right, they looked at our epigenetic biological clocks.
Exactly.
And for anyone who hasn't encountered epigenetic aging before, we should probably clarify how this works because this is completely separate from chronological age, right?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the number of candles in your birthday cake.
Right. You might be 40 years old chronologically, but epigenetics looks at the actual wear and tear on your DNA.
The best way to visualize epigenetics is to think of your DNA as an instruction manual for your body.
Mm-hmm.
The actual words in the manual never change.
Right. Your genes are your genes.
Exactly.
Bro.
But as you experience stress or pollution or poor diet, your body adds little chemical tags called methylation marks to the pages.
My little sticky notes.
Yeah, or like paper clips and highlighters. They can literally glue certain pages shut so your body can't read the protective genes. Or they can highlight genes that promote inflammation.
Oh, wow.
So epigenetic aging is essentially measuring how many of those pages have been glued shut or highlighted in ways that degrade your body's overall function.
Okay, so the study is looking at how dealing with an annoying person actually alters those chemical tags on your DNA. And they use 2 specific, state-of-the-art clocks derived from saliva samples to measure this.
Right. The first is called Dunning pace.
Dunning pace.
Yes. And Dunning pace is designed to measure the rate of your aging. Think of it as a snapshot of right now, like how fast is your biological clock ticking at this exact moment. The second clock they used is called age-accelerated Grimmage 2.
That's an intense name, Grimmage 2.
It is. And rather than the current speed, this one measures your cumulative biological age. It looks at the total burden of cellular damage you've accumulated over your entire life compared to what is expected for someone born in your same year.
Got it. So we have a way to measure the speed of aging and a way to measure the total amount of aging.
Exactly.
And when the researchers connected these 2 biological clocks to the presence of hasslers in a person's life, the numbers were just intense.
They really were. They found that each additional hassler in your life is associated with a 1.5% faster pace of aging on that first clock.
1.5% faster.
Yeah. And when looking at the cumulative clock, the Grimmage 2, Each hassler leaves a person roughly 9 months older, biologically, than their peers who don't have to deal with a hassler.
9 months older. I want to pause here because those numbers can sound a little abstract. 9 months older biologically, a 1.5% faster pace. Let's try to ground this with an analogy. If the Downton pace clock is like the speedometer in a car, right? It's showing how fast you're aging right now.
Oh, yes, exactly.
And the Grimmage 2 clock is the odometer. It's showing the total miles of damage you've accrued over the years. My question is, how bad is this compared to other things that damage the car? Like, is a bad relationship really as dangerous as a bad physical habit?
That's a great question. And taking that odometer comparison further gives us a really good way to measure the damage. The researchers actually provided a benchmark.
What did they compare it to?
They compared the biological toll of having a hassler to the biological toll of being a daily smoker.
Wow. Smoking, like the gold standard of terrible.
The difference in aging that you see between a smoker and a non-smoker.
Wait, really? 13 to 17% of the damage is smoking just from interacting with a toxic person?
Yeah. I mean, no, it isn't as severe as smoking a pack a day. But 13 to 17% makes it a highly significant, measurable biological risk factor. The stress of that relationship is literally pressing the gas pedal on your cellular speedometer.
And adding permanent miles to your biological odometer.
Precisely.
If this biological toll is so severe, it really makes you wonder if we're all exposed to it equally or if, some people are stuck carrying a heavier load. Because exposure to these people can't just be random chance, right?
Oh, it isn't random at all. The researchers frame this as an issue of relational inequality.
Relational inequality, what does that mean?
It means certain demographic and psychological profiles are systematically more likely to be exposed to these toxic ties. The data actually showed that women, daily smokers, people who are already in poorer health, and individuals with adverse childhood experiences, which are often referred to as ACEs, are all significantly more likely to have a higher number of hasslers in their networks.
So the people who are already carrying a heavy physiological or emotional load are essentially getting hit twice. They have the burden of their existing health issues or past trauma, and then they're carrying the accelerated aging burden of these negative relationships.
That's a compounding effect, yes.
But there was this psychological quirk in the data regarding how people view themselves that really stood out to me. The researchers asked people 2 different questions about their roles in their relationships.
Right, the dependency questions.
Yeah. People who felt that, quote, others depend on them reported having more hasslers, but people who felt, quote, important to others reported having fewer hasslers.
The distinction there is vital. I mean, feeling that others depend on you often implies this sense of burdensome obligation.
Like you're the designated fixer.
Exactly. You are the fixer. You're the one who has to absorb the stress of the group, which naturally surrounds you with people who demand your energy, the hasslers.
Right.
But feeling important to others implies reciprocal value. You are cherished, not just utilized. It speaks directly to the presence of healthy boundaries.
Okay, wait. Looking at these numbers, I have to say I'm genuinely skeptical about something.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if someone is already chronically ill, or if they're dealing with the fallout of severe childhood trauma, they are probably exhausted.
Certainly.
Their fuse is likely incredibly short. So naturally, they might just perceive everyone around them as a hassle, even if those people are just acting normally. How do we know the sickness isn't creating the bad relationships rather than the relationships causing the sickness?
It's a great point, and that is the crucial hurdle for any observational study. We call it reverse causality. If you just take a snapshot in time, you can't tell which direction the arrow points.
Exactly.
But the researchers didn't rely on a single snapshot. They utilized a longitudinal design, meaning they followed up with a large group of the participants months later.
So they tracked the progression over time.
Yes. They found that the number of hasslers a person reported at the very beginning of the study predicted future health declines, and they also mathematically adjusted for the person's baseline health at the start.
So they basically removed any existing illness from the equation.
Exactly. They removed it to see what was driving the new damage. And even then, the presence of baseline hasslers predicted a downward slide in health months later. The arrow points clearly from the negative relationship to the biological damage.
Wow. So the relationship itself really is the toxin. It's not just a symptom of someone being grumpy or already sick.
What's fascinating here is how this longitudinal data ties back to those adverse childhood experiences. The data strongly suggests that early adversity essentially traps people.
Traps them how?
Well, childhood trauma can shape adult environments, basically normalizing conflict, to the point where an individual unknowingly builds a social network where demanding, volatile ties are common.
That makes a lot of sense.
The trauma creates a structural vulnerability. They just don't have the blueprint for setting the boundaries that would keep hasslers out, so they end up in social structures that literally age them faster.
Man, it is a devastating cycle. You endure trauma early on, which makes conflict feel familiar, so you end up surrounded by people who constantly hassle you, which then degrades your DNA.
It's brutal.
That brings up a really critical question about the structure of these networks. Because since certain people are structurally trapped with more hasslers, doesn't matter who the hassler actually is.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, is a demanding boss doing the same biological damage as a hypercritical sibling?
Well, the study broke the data down by relationship type. They divided the network into 3 categories: kin, non-kin, and spouses.
Okay.
Kin includes family members like parents, children, and siblings. Non-kin covers peripheral ties like coworkers, roommates, or neighbors.
Let's look at the family first, the kin.
Family is where the damage is the most severe and the most common. Kin hasslers show the strongest, most consistent link to accelerated biological aging.
I mean, that hurts to hear, but it tracks.
Yeah, the sociometric data showed that parents and children act as hasslers almost 10% of the time. If you compare that to friends, friends are only identified as hasslers about 3.5% of the time.
So we are vastly more likely to be hassled by our blood relatives than our chosen friends, which makes logical sense. I mean, you can curate your friends. You can't curate your parents or your siblings.
Precisely. Now, looking at the non-kin, the weaker ties, like a difficult coworker in the cubicle next to you or a messy roommate, the study found that even these peripheral negative ties significantly increase your cumulative biological age.
Wow. So the daily friction of a bad coworker still adds miles to the odometer.
Yes, it does.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The third category, the spouses.
Yes. The spousal paradox.
Right. The study found that having a spouse or a romantic partner who qualifies as a hassler showed absolutely no significant association with accelerated biological aging.
Which is wild. A coworker can age you. A sibling can age you. But the person you share a bed with, even if they constantly hassle you, does not accelerate your biological clock.
I was trying to wrap my head around this paradox, and I think it comes down to a concept sociologists call multiplexity.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of a spouse as a Swiss Army knife. They are a multi-tool.
Right.
Yes, they might have a small blade that occasionally nicks you. You know, they hassle you, they bicker with you about the grocery budget or who does the chores.
Yeah.
But that exact same tool is also a screwdriver, a corkscrew, a pair of scissors. They are your financial partner, your confidant, your emergency contact, your companion. The sheer volume of positive, multifaceted support surrounds and buffers out the negative friction.
That visual perfectly illustrates the sociological mechanics at play here. The researchers actually connected this specific paradox to George Simmel's classic theory of social balance.
Oh, who's that?
He was a sociologist.
Oh.
And Simmel argued that the most intense conflict often occurs in our most intimate relationships, precisely because the intimacy creates a safe container for it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. You can bicker over the grocery budget with your spouse because there is an underlying foundation of security.
Exactly.
You know they aren't going to, abandon the marriage over a minor disagreement about taking out the trash. The conflict and the closeness coexist.
Yes. The spouse has high multiplexity. The support neutralizes the stress. But compare that to a kin hassler.
Right.
A highly critical relative who only calls to complain, or a sibling who constantly demands your resources. They're not a Swiss Army knife.
They are a single rusty wrench.
Exactly.
You can't just throw the rusty wrench away because it's your family. You're bound by blood and societal obligation. But that wrench serves absolutely no positive purpose in your life. It doesn't offer support or companionship. It's just a rusty wrench hitting you in the knee over and over again.
In sociological terms, that family tie is structurally embedded.
Structurally embedded.
Yes. You're locked into the relationship through an enduring network of obligations, but it completely lacks the multiplexity, the multi-tool support of a spouse.
Wow.
When you are structurally embedded with someone, but the interactions are purely negative, you are trapped in a state of chronic stress. You can't easily disengage, but you receive zero positive buffering.
So we know these rusty wrench family members trap us in a cycle of psychological stress. But, the brain doesn't keep that stress quarantined in your mind.
Hmm.
It has to translate that social trap into a chemical signal that floods the rest of your body to cause the cellular aging we talked about. What is the actual mechanism bridging a toxic phone call to DNA damage?
The bridge is your body's primary alarm system. It's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, commonly known as the HPA axis. This is the physiological system responsible for your fight or flight response.
The system designed to save us from physical danger.
Yes. And from an evolutionary perspective, the brain doesn't differentiate well between a physical threat, like a predator, and a severe social threat, like a hostile family member attacking your status or security.
So your body reacts the same way.
Exactly. When you interact with a hassler, your brain perceives danger and signals the HPA axis to flood your bloodstream with stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate elevates, your blood pressure spikes, and energy is diverted from long-term maintenance to immediate survival.
Which is fantastic if you need to run away from a bear. It is terrible if you're sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner table.
Because you can't run away, and you can't physically fight. The stress hormones have nowhere to go. And because family ties are structurally embedded, this isn't a one-time event, it is chronic.
Right, happens every holiday, every phone call.
Dealing with that rusty wrench relative week after week means your HPA axis never fully powers down. You are constantly soaking your cells in cortisol. This raises an important question about a biological concept called allostatic load.
Allostatic load. Break down how that works in the body for us.
Think of your body like an engine. It is designed to rev up into the red zone occasionally, get you up a steep hill. Allostatic load is the physiological wear and tear that happens when you force that engine to run in the red zone continuously.
Oh man, so it just wears out.
Exactly. It's the exhaustion and breakdown of your bodily systems from constantly trying to adapt to chronic stress.
Hmm.
The allostatic load from these negative ties doesn't just age your DNA, it causes your entire physiological system to malfunction.
And the other health metrics they tracked in this study paint an incredibly clear picture of that malfunction. Beyond just the epigenetic clocks, they found that each additional hassler causes severe spikes in the severity of clinical depression and anxiety.
Yes, huge mental health impacts.
But it also changes the physical architecture of the body. Like people with more hasslers had higher BMIs, they had larger waist-to-hip ratios, and they exhibited significantly higher systemic inflammation. They measured the inflammation using epigenetic CRP scores. We should probably translate what a CRP score actually is.
Sure, CRP stands for C-reactive protein. It's essentially a biological distress flare. When your immune system senses cellular damage or infection, your liver pumps out C-reactive protein to trigger inflammation to fight the problem. So a high CRP score basically means your immune system is in this constant state of low-grade panic. Your body is perpetually swollen at a cellular level, trying to heal trauma that is psychological, not physical.
That is wild. And the physical changes in body composition, like how does an annoying relative make you gain visceral fat around your waist?
That circles back directly to the cortisol from the HPA axis. Chronic high cortisol levels signal to your body that you are in a sustained survival crisis.
Right.
And the biological response to a crisis is to hoard energy. Cortisol literally instructs your metabolism to store fat, particularly visceral fat around your midsection, to ensure you don't starve during the impending emergency.
So your body is preparing for a famine that never arrives, triggered entirely by social friction.
That is exactly what is happening.
It's a full system physiological reaction to a purely social problem. And there's one detail in the study's methodology that I think proves this isn't just a statistical illusion. Yes. Because when a study links one thing like a hassler to a dozen different bad outcomes like depression, BMI, inflammation, and aging, it's easy to suspect the researchers just manipulated the math to find bad news everywhere.
Right. It can look like they're just fishing for problems.
So to prevent this, the scientists included what's called a negative control. They ran their algorithms to see if having a hassler affected the adult participant's physical height.
That's just brilliant.
It is, because logically, having a demanding mother or a toxic coworker cannot shrink your bones. Your adult height is fixed.
Right.
If the math was flawed, or if they were just finding phantom correlations, the hasslers might have shown a link to height. But exactly as expected, the data showed absolutely zero correlation between negative ties and adult height.
Which is exactly what you want to see.
Yeah.
It proves the methodology is precise, The statistical tools only highlight relationships where biological plausibility actually exists. It confirms that the weight gain, the systemic inflammation, and the accelerated epigenetic aging are genuine physical reactions to the stress of these specific social ties.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from the chemistry of DNA methylation through the sociology of family networks to the biology of stress hormones. How does this actually apply to our daily lives?
I think the overarching takeaway is a necessary shift in how we evaluate our social environments. We usually operate under the assumption that social interaction is universally protective. That having a large network is inherently good for longevity.
More friends equals a longer life.
Right. But this data proves that negative ties are potent physical stressors. They are biologically dangerous. We have to treat chronic social friction with the same seriousness that we treat environmental toxins or poor diet.
And it means you can't just offset a bad relationship by adding more good ones.
No, you cannot outfriend a toxic family member. Building a strong support network is crucial, of course, but it does not erase the allostatic load generated by the hasslers. The study makes it clear that active mitigation is required. If you don't address the source of the chronic stress, your body will just continue to run in the red zone.
We spend a tremendous amount of time, money, and mental energy trying to optimize our physical health.
Absolutely.
We track our macronutrients, we obsess over daily step counts on our smartwatches, we invest in sleep hygiene to try and maximize our lifespans.
Ice baths, supplements, you name it.
Exactly. But we might be completely ignoring the biological impact of the people sitting across the table from us. Setting a firm boundary with an energy-draining relative isn't just a psychological exercise in protecting your peace of mind.
No, it's not.
It is a legitimate, scientifically validated intervention to protect your cellular health.
It's a behavioral choice that fundamentally alters your biology.
But, taking all this data in flips the perspective in a pretty uncomfortable way.
How so?
Well, if negative relationships are this biologically damaging, if they are literally accelerating the aging process, storing visceral fat, and flooding the body with cortisol, we have to look in the mirror and ask the hardest question of all. Are you the rusty wrench in someone else's biological clock?